everyone, welcome back to my place. I'm so sorry for the lighting. It is nighttime and my kids are in bed, and this is kind of the only time I think I'm gonna have to film this video, so I'm gonna do it now, but I apologize for my appearance and everything. So this is gonna be part 2 of Harmony's story. If you have not seen part 1, I would go check that out first. I'll have it linked in the description. So that you kind of have an understanding of everything that's going on with her. Okay, so last week I left off with us being transferred to a hospital 2 hours away from us. We got transferred down to Nicholas Children's Hospital in Miami, and we got there like around 11 at night and finally got settled, and I answered all the doctor's questions. They reviewed all the previous tests that the hospital did before, and so by the time we got all settled, it was like 2 in the morning. I finally got to go to sleep. I was exhausted. Holy cow. Anyways, so on Saturday, which was the next day, they told us that they have an idea of what her condition could be. So they wanted to do a test called the HIDA scan. A HIDA scan is basically an imaging of your liver, gallbladder, intestines, and biliary tract. And what they do is they inject a very small amount of radiation, and it will cause the digestive system basically to light up, and it will show if anything is missing. So on Saturday, they started her on a medication that prepared her for this specific scan, and it was a 5-day process. So for 5 days, she had to be on this medication, and so during those 5 days, they just did a little testing here and there, and they kind of just really kept an eye on her bilirubin, and not too much went on. Finally, Thursday came, they brought her in for the scan, and basically they were able to confirm that her bile ducts, which connect the liver and the intestines, were not developed. They were not there, and so they did a biopsy on her liver so they could get an official diagnosis, and they were able to diagnose her with biliary atresia. So Harmony was diagnosed with that, and she had surgery a week later. She was 2.5 weeks old. When I found out, it was literally the weekend before Christmas, it was Thursday, and then like the weekend, Christmas was on the weekend. And so it was really hard for me to understand why this was all happening at this time, and it was really hard for me to grasp just everything that was going on. I was away from my family, and it was just such a trying time for me, especially with like my faith and everything. I questioned God, and I didn't understand. I felt so at peace, and I felt like everything was going to be okay, and we were going to be home for Christmas and everything like that. But I think I myself just deceived myself, trying to convince myself that everything was good and she'll be fine. So anyways, I ended up going home for Christmas. I left Harmony at the hospital, and the nurses took wonderful care of her. They even gave her little presents on Christmas. And when I came back, the first thing that she did when she saw me was have the biggest smile on her face. I'll put it in a picture so you guys can see. That was the first time she ever smiled, and she was only a little over 2 weeks old. It is the most amazing thing, and she just kept smiling at me and kept smiling at me. And so her surgery was on a Wednesday, and so me and Daniel were there, and we got to go through. Did I even mention she needed surgery? I don't think I mentioned that. It's late, guys. So yeah, she needed a surgery. She got the KASAI procedure. So the KASAI procedure is basically what they do is they would take the intestines and directly connect it to the liver. And if there were any type of bile duct development, they just removed it and then connected it, the intestines to the liver, so that bile flow can get through, and her liver was able to properly function long enough to just have, so that she can grow. This surgery was basically a temporary surgery. Some babies can go their whole life with just this surgery. They don't need anything else. Some babies, actually most babies, will end up with a transplant. For Harmony, after the surgery, it was about 2.5 weeks after surgery, she was able to come home. She was 5 weeks old when she came home. And I just had to adjust to the life of having a baby on medication and her life being at risk all the time. And it was a very scary, hard few months of just not knowing when something could go wrong and if something's gonna go wrong and stuff like that. So she was 4 months old, and I noticed she was breathing really weird. She had like this weird sound in her breathing. It was almost as if she was like grunting with each breath. And so I brought her to the pediatrician, and she told me that I should go to the hospital, because obviously the pediatrician's not going to know what's going on in the inside of her. So we went to the hospital. We went down to St. Mary's Children's Hospital because that was just the closest hospital that dealt with pediatrics. And they did testing there, and they were able to basically confirm that there was an infection in her liver. And so they said they didn't want to do anything though, because they wanted her surgeon to check her first and see what was going on. So we ended up on a helicopter flying down to Nicholas Children's Hospital again, and she was very sick. It was a very hard time, and even telling the story is very hard for me. It's like I'm reliving it, but the first day that we were there, she almost lost her life probably about 4 times. There were several times that nurses and doctors had to rush in and to stabilize her again. I'll insert some pictures in here. She was basically as this big sumo baby. She was so swollen, and her just whole body was just filling up with fluids. And at the end of the day, there was a moment where they rushed in, they stabilized her, and they told me that they're going to have to do a procedure, an emergency procedure, which I don't remember if it had an actual name for it. I can't remember the name of it. But they basically cut open her stomach, put her in her organs inside like a bag and left it in the stomach, but her stomach was open. And by doing that, they were able to drain the fluids. She had her belly open like that for 3 weeks. And so it was very hard. She was on a ventilator. She had all types of medications going through her. And it was just a very scary time. She was in the hospital for a total of 10 weeks. And she finally was able to recover enough. I think she was at Nicholas Children's Hospital for like 6 or 7 weeks, and then she got transferred over to Jackson Memorial Hospital, which is where the transplant unit is. And they were able to do her liver evaluation and put her on the transplant list. Finally, after being 3 weeks at that specific hospital, we were able to go home, and we had in-home nurses that stayed with us to help take care of her because she was just on all types of medications. She was also on an NG tube now, being fed through her nose because her stomach couldn't handle too much food, and so it had to bypass her stomach and go into her duodenum, basically so just directly into the digestive system. So yeah, it was definitely an adjustment, a life adjustment, and it was scary and it was hard. So she was on the transplant list by June 16th, and we got a call for a donor from a match on September 21st. Right? Yeah, September 21st is when we got the call. So she got her transplant on September 22nd, and she has been doing amazing ever since then. I am so incredibly thankful that although this was the scariest thing of our life and this was the hardest thing, I'm so glad that we're past it and she's doing amazing. Yeah, she's still at risks and she's still on medications that will keep her liver healthy, and because if you don't know anything about transplant, when you get a transplant, your body doesn't recognize the organ and it will start to fight it off. So you have to be on an anti-rejection medication your whole life, basically, so that your body doesn't fight off the organ that you received. But yeah, she's doing great. Sorry if this seems like such a sad story. It's just me talking about it right now. It's hard. It's so hard to think back and look back and just remember it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, and I will be posting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.